بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إني نويت تعلم وتعليم تذكر وتذكير النفع والانتفاع لفعل الاستفادة حتى تمسك بكتاب الله وعلى سنة رسول الله ودعاء للهدى للخرج لمرضاته قربه وصاب الله تعالى. اللهم ها هنا بين يديك ودعفنا لا يخفى عليك وتعامل بلطفك جودك برحمتك ارحم الراحمين وسحم ورقلها ظاهرها باطنها في إنك على كل شيء قدير وعلى سؤالنا جدير. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. Last time we were together we mentioned the book of An-Nabdha as-Sughra, which is a text by the great Imam al-Allama Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Adani, who is still alive, who's from the progeny of Sayyidina Hussein radiyallahu anhu and from the Ahl al-Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you could say in this age he is the reviver of this science of fiqh tahawulat, which we're going to look at. And literally, if you translate it word for word, the word tahawulat, you could say it means the fiqh, the understanding of the changing conditions are occurring in the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's two translations of the text. This is one of the translations, translated by Sheikh Hamad Sa'ad, and this is a text that we're going to start to go through gradually. And what that means is that this lesson, we're going to look at some of the ways in which to understand the changes that are occurring around us. And these changes that are occurring around us, how we understand them in the context of the words the Prophet ﷺ said about them. And the books about the alamat, the signs of Akhir al-Zaman, are many. And the books about Imam al-Mahdi al-Muntadhir, the awaited guided one, are many. However, the details of how all of this transposes and fits together as a coherent whole, that's still knowledge which is not very widely known amongst believers. And the book, for example, Tazkir al-Ahwal al-Mawta wal-Akhirah, Imam al-Qurtubi, not the same Qurtubi of the tafsir, or al-Isha'at fi Asharat al-Sa'a, or Imam al-Barzanji. Also, these are works that contain hadith about the portents that will occur at the Akhir al-Zaman, and they call alamat. And it's good for us sometimes that when we always want to know the hadith. Has this been told in hadith? Has this occurred? Did the Prophet mention this? Is this something which corresponds to this particular hadith of the Prophet ﷺ? And when we do that, what we do is that we rush into the topic without understanding of what the basis of this science is. That is why we are going to look at this text, which should explain to us the basis of this science, inshallah. And once we've understood the basis of this science, thereafter we'll be in a more stronger position to understand of how to interact with the changes that are occurring all around us. Because the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did not leave us without guidance within the most difficult of periods. And before we get to the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ, we need to understand some of the istilahat, which is some of the technical terminology of this science. And we're going to now reform, so to say, some of our understandings of some of the great hadith of our deen that talk about what is the basis of our deen. And that is the famous hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. And the hadith, as you know, ends when the Prophet alayhi salatu was said to Sayyidina Umar and he said to him, Ja'akum Jibreel yu'allimukum amra deenukum. Sayyidina Jibreel has come to you and he has come to teach you the affairs or the matters of your religion. Now, so when this is the case, yes, we have to go back to this hadith. And we realize that the hadith, as you know, has three parts which are all very well known and understood: Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. But yet there's a fourth part, yes, which sometimes we pass without anything more than what? Translation of what the Prophet ﷺ said. And if you look at Islam, Iman, Ihsan, these are sciences in themselves. So the science of Iman or the science of Aqidah, Ilm al-Kalam, Ilm al-Munadhara, yes, Ilm al-Wada', all these are sciences within our deen. The science of revealed theology, the science of creed, the science of the essences of words and meanings and the relationship to reality. Yes, these are all sciences connected to the science of Iman. And everyone has, and within these sciences you have madaris, you have schools. And these sciences take years, sometimes decades, sometimes lifetimes for a person before he can gain any sort of proficiency in those type of sciences. And this is why you have things called Aqidah al-Awam, for example, the Aqidah of the generality, of the populace, which talks about the general precepts we believe about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is taught to children. Or Jawhar al-Tawheed, for example, or for example, Aqidah Tahawiyah. So these are various, and then you have works that go into detail about Aqidah, about how you would disprove the existence of Allah, the hereafter, the prophets, to people who have no basis in faith, atheists or disbelievers in revealed revelation. And then you have Fuad Bahiyya, you have Taftazani, Shar al-Aqaid, you have Mawaqif. The texts are endless in this field. And continue. So you have a whole madrasa to do with Iman. Yes, Aqidah. Then you have a madrasa to do, and madaris to do with Islam. And what is Islam? No, fiqh, al-amal, al-badni, yani external actions. And within this, we have the four well-known madahib, but there's also others that passed or disappeared over the passage and the vestiges of time. And then outside of the four madahib, we also have the Jafiri school, we have the Zaydi school, and also other less known schools also exist. And every single school is a madrasa, which means it's a faculty in itself. Meaning that we know there's scholars within that school. Like for example, if you would say to me, who are the world leaders for example, genetics, and a person can spend a lifetime in genetics and not get to the end of the science. Yes, in the same way in the science of fiqh, and not only fiqh, but every school within the science of fiqh. Yes. Then you have fiqh, which is just the rulings. We have from that you have the kitab of the various sections of mu'amalat, which is transactions, mu'asharat, which is a common existence of social contract with each other. Within that you also have adab and akhlaq, which are the etiquettes of our faith. Then you also have within that a kitab or fiqh al-buyu', the fiqh of buying and selling and transactions and financial devices and so forth. Yes? And that's only in one school. And multiply that by a number of schools that there are. And then multiply that also by the various other sciences that we have that form or connected to fiqh. For example, the ilm of qawaid fiqhiyya, the science of the principle, not you could say the qawaid or the rules of fiqh, or the principles of fiqh. And then you have usul al-fiqh, which is the origins of how fiqh is derived. And then you have something called ashbah nadhair, which is basically topics which are agreeing with each other from one concept, one aspect, and disagreeing with the other. So what we're understanding from this, that fiqh or Islam itself is, as they say about the knowledge, about that ilm, طُبِخَتْ وَنَضَجَتْ. They say this was a knowledge that was cooked and or baked and it ripened. And ilm al-ihsan, ilm of tazkiyah, ilm of tazkiyah. And within that you have tens of schools. From Naqshbandiyya, Chishtiya, Sharwahdiyya, the Ba'alawiyya, Sunusiyya, and the list continues. You have tens of schools, the Shadhiliyya for example, tens of schools. It's similar to how the schools of law in Islam, we have the schools of tazkiyah, school or the turuq in the ilm of ihsan. So these three aspects of our deen, very well demarcated, very well clarified, very well written about, very well understood, at least in terms of what was written regarding them. No? However, when it comes to the knowledge of the Akhir al-Zaman, or the knowledge of Akhir al-Zaman, it's still very much in the state of collation, which means that we have the ahadith, and the scholars were not ignorant of the fact of those ahadith. And they were also not ignorant of the fact that the commentaries upon them were in great, were wanting, and there was a dearth of commentaries upon the meanings of these ahadith. The scholars were not oblivious to this fact. However, the reason why this science is not as developed as the others, because this science, the Prophet ﷺ speaks by rumuz. And what the hadith says, when Sayyidina Jibreel says, وَمَا هِيَ أَمَرَاتُهَا, what are its signs? He didn't say, مَاذَا يَحْدُثْ فِي آخِرِ الزَّمَانِ, what will happen at the end of time? The incidents, which is what we were looking for, everyone's looking for incidents, yes? But he said, مَا أَمَرَاتُهَا, what are its signs? What are the portents, the symbols? Because this language of Akhir Zaman is a language of symbols, is a language of portents, a language of isharat, yes? And the reason for this is because this science is not a science which, unlike the other three, is something which can be grasped by every person. This is the same reason we talked about last. What did we say about Sayyidina Abu Hurairah? How do you remember what you said? And the reason why I came upstairs to make it a bit more interactive, yeah? So
they would chop his head off if he told them some of the knowledge.
He pointed towards his throat and he said they would cut this pointing towards his jugular vein, meaning that they'd execute him. And also some of the signs, as the Prophet ﷺ told the secret, the whole of his secret, also he can conceal that from people, and only later was that spread as he came close to his departure from this world. And these books that is written, like we mentioned, what do we say they were called? Do you remember? The Jufan, yes? These are parchments in which these news of Akhir Zaman is recorded. Now the issue that we have is that the Shia also have Jufan, and we can't sometimes tell if this is actually some of what Sayyidina Ali actually said, or whether it's not what he said. Obviously there's no chain of narration, it's weak, but there's also from the Ahl Sunnah, these texts, these parchments in which they wrote down what the Prophet ﷺ said to some of the select companions. And they only did this. Why did they do this? They did this so that they would not be accounted amongst those people who concealed knowledge. But this knowledge had its people. Yes, its knowledge had its people, meaning that it only had those who would understand the reality of that knowledge, that had access to this knowledge. Is that clear? Yes. So what we're going to do today is we're going to return back to the hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel, and we are going to go through this parts of this text because it does this quite well. And this is like a silsila, it's like a whole syllabus the Sheikh has put into place. And this is like one of the beginning texts, and then it gets more detailed and complicated as we progress. And the first thing we should take away is that when the Prophet ﷺ said amarat, the people on Skype, if the signal gets weak or you get cut off, just open your mic and just speak to us, because I can't see your text anymore. And then just mention, I'll go back to the text and try to reconnect the call, inshallah ta'ala. So we're going to go through some sections of this text. Now, the sections of this text are broken down into short lessons. Yes? It's approximately. Does anybody else have the book with them? Okay, just the sisters now. It's broken down into short lessons, 25 lessons in fact. Yes, 25 lessons. And this is like an introduction to the science. What we're going to take sections from this text, inshallah. There will be a discussion around it. And then also going to look at some of the ahadith connected to the science as we look at isha'at or ahwal al-mawta وما بعده من قرطبي إن شاء الله تعالى. So when we talk about Islam, Iman and Ihsan, it's clear what we are talking about. Yes. As for this ilm, we mentioned that the word that's used in the hadith of Jibreel when he says amaratuha, its signs, is that it's a symbolic science. It's a science of signs, and it's not a science of clear demarcation. And the reason for that, as we mentioned, is because the sensitivity of the subject matter. Because people are going to be mentioned, groups are going to be mentioned, ruling classes are going to be mentioned. Yes? And so when Abu Hurairah, when he mentioned that particular hadith, he was talking specifically about the ruling classes which arose in his time and will also arise and continue to arise in the end of time. Okay? So the Imam starts the book with the following introduction. He starts off from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, on page 3 I think of the book, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions فَحَلْ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا سَاعَةً أَنْ تَأْتِيهِمْ بَغْتَةً فَقَدْ جَاءَ أَشَرَاتُهَا فَأَنَّى لَهُمْ إِذَا جَاءَتْهُمْ ذِكْرَاهُمْ. So he starts off with this ayah from Surah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when Allah says, and have you seen, and when they see, accept the signs. As-sa'ah, or the hour. It comes to them suddenly. However, does it come suddenly? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but know that portents have already come. So before the hour will come, the signs will be there. Again, it's mentioned, فَقَدْ جَاءَ أَشَرَاتُهَا. It's signs. Not that knowledge of it necessarily come, but only its signs will come. And those people of lub, of most understanding, will see its signs, will be able to recognize them. Not everybody will. When signs comes upon them, then will their remembrance of this admonition help them? So it's a question. It says, فَأَنَّى لَهُمْ يعني كَيْفَ لَهُمْ إِذَا جَاءَتْهُمْ ذِكْرَاهُم. And what will it be when these signs come and they remember these signs? Will they take heed of it? Is the question that's being asked. Yes? So for some, the signs will have meaning. They will guide them. They will abstain. Or they will understand the reality of the process that's happening around the world or around them. Yes? But there will be others who will see these signs, and they will come and they will pass, and they will take no benefit from those signs. And the fact that I mentioned the fact that this ayah is mentioned in Surah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a sir, there's a wisdom behind that. What did the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam say? He says, أَنَا نَبِي بُعِثْتُمْ إِلَيْكُمْ بَيْنَ يَدَيِ السَّاعَةِ. I am the Prophet sent to you between the two moments of the hour. وَلَا نَبِي آخِرِ الزَّمَانِ. I am the Prophet of the end times. So the fact that this was mentioned in the surah of the Prophet ﷺ also is of importance. So thereafter, the scholar, he mentions the Matla' al-Nabawi, which is basically the prophetic starting point. And this is the asas. If we understand this, And it's narrated Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu. He says, and Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سيصيب أمتي في آخر الزمان بلاء شديد من سلاطينهم لا ينجو منه إلا. He said, in the end of times, the Ummah will go through great tribulations, and nobody will be saved from them except these. So who's going to mention some people at first of these categories? رجل عرف دين الله بلسانه ويده وقلبه فذلك الذي سبقت له سوابق. The person who knows the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his tongue, by his hand, and by his heart. And this is a person who is of the greatest status, and he precedes all else, all others. Yeah. And then Sayyidina Umar, he continues, the next number 2, رجل عرف دين الله عرف دين الله فصدق به والأول عليه سابقة. And the person who the deen of Allah subhanahu he testifies to it, and he is in a good state, but the first person has prominence or advantage over him. And then Sayyidina Umar says, from the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَالرَّجُلٌ عَرَفَ دِينَ اللَّهِ فَسَكَتْ فَإِنْ رَأَى مَنْ يَعْمَلْ بِخَيْرٍ أَحَبَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَإِنْ رَأَى مَنْ يَعْمَلْ بَاطِلٍ أَبْغَضَهُ عَلَيْهِ وَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَنْجُو عَلَى إِبْطَانِهِ. And then a person who knows the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quiet, silent, doesn't respond when he sees wrong around him in what he has the capacity to respond to. And this person, if he sees evil around him, if he sees good around him, first, أَحَبَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. He loves it, he likes to it, seeing it, he attests to it, and it brings him happiness. You know? And he loves the person who does the good deed, and that's good for him. وَإِنْ رَأَى مَنْ يَعْمَلْ بِبَاطِلٍ. And if he's somebody who sees doing an evil deed or something that is disliked, أَبْغَضَهُ عَلَيْهِ. He has feelings of hatred towards it, you know, and dislikes it. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَنْجُو عَلَى إِبْطَانِهِ. This is the person who will be saved from concealing his detestation or his hatred for the wrong he sees around him. Meaning that these are the only 3 people that will be saved in that time. These will be the only 3 people that will be saved in that time. So the last of it is what we mentioned. مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ بِقَلْبِهِ وَهَذَا ضَعْفُ الْإِيمَانِ. I mean all the hadith, yes? The person who can see a wrong, change it with your hand. The person who can see it wrong, change it with your tongue. The person who can see a wrong, change it with your heart. And know that this is the least of darajah of iman. And this is what we're going to come into the hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam in a moment to explain this. Meaning that we are passing through a state of being and existence now, where our understanding of realities is being changed gradually. Where something which was previously considered to be an evil or detested or even unconceivable has now entered the realms of the conceivable. While we may say detested at this point in time, as time progresses, what we hold to be inconceivable will start to be conceivable and detested. Then it will leave the state of conceivable and detested and enter into the state of indifference. Yes? And then from a state of indifference, it will enter the state of being something which is considered to be possibly doubtful within our faith, not clear. Then from that state it will enter into a state of being praiseworthy. So this is a state which changes will take place. And hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, it has two major foundations. When I say two major foundations, I mean the section to do with the alamat of Akhir zaman. No? Akhir zaman. What does that mean? The hadith has two major statements when the Prophet ﷺ requested from Sayyidina Jibreel, amaratuha, its signs. Sayyidina Jibreel gave him two major signs. And these two major signs are connected to each other, and they are also symbols of change that will occur in the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ and in humanity at large. We will read the prologue of that of the text by the Sheikh in a moment, inshallah ta'ala. Yeah. So the first thing to bear in mind, the Sheikh mentions on page 7 in lesson 1, he mentions 4 components of the faith. The 4 components being Islam, Iman and Ihsan, and the last component of the Deen is alamatu sa'a. They are the signs of the last moments, the last days. No? And alama in Arabic is like in the hadith amara, amaratuha, or ma'alim, like signs that you have, like for example on a crossroad. It points in a certain direction, it takes you on a trajectory. Yes? And this will become important when we look at it later on, inshallah ta'ala. So let's just read, inshallah, some sections of lesson 1, and then we'll mention why the same scholar has also written a book called Dalal al-Nabawiyya li-Mu'abbira an Sharaf al-Madrasa al-Abawiyya. Translates as, you could say, the prophetic like the prophetic guidance, you could say, the prophetic proof, which expresses the superiority of the inherited or the traditional school. And when he says madrasa, he doesn't mean in a physical meaning. He means it in terms of a methodology. Yes. And the Imam, the Sheikh himself mentions in some of his talks, he says that in the past, a person will go through a system of education where the reality of what he sees in the physical realm and the world is imbued by the spiritual and by what the faith has demarcated for him. In that the physical realm is understood only in subservience to the spiritual and only in subservience to our faith. So he says, he mentions that people used to go to gatherings of knowledge, gatherings of dhikr. They would be in the company of people who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Actions would be there. They would see maybe karamat around them. They would attest to the miracles. Their beliefs about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the universe and how they are created. All of this understanding, the whole understanding of the whole world, yes, would be together. So that faith itself, the Iman itself, was such that the Madrasa al-Abawiyya, the traditional inherited school from the Prophet ﷺ, understanding of the Prophet, would all be united into one. So any aspect of the physical that they would see would be understood only from the spiritual, or only from the divine revelation. And realities were called realities according to the dictionary or nomenclature, you could say, or the wordings of the Prophet ﷺ and our deen. So realities would be claimed exactly how they were. Something which was mahmud or praiseworthy would be claimed to be praiseworthy. Something which was detested, or makruh, or haram, or or disbelief would be claimed exactly as it was in that period. Only later, when there's a separation, and this is one of the akhir zaman, when you go to the hadith, said Jibril, when this started to occur, the separation of divine revealed knowledge from the what occurs in the physical realm. There was a separation between the two, and we were made to believe or convinced that now these two have separate realms and they exist in separate realms. They have no connection to each other. In fact, the reality of the Prophet ﷺ and our deen says something totally separate from this. It mentions and it clarifies that spiritual actions or actions of Bani Bashar have yanaqis, and they reflect themselves in the physical realm. Yes? That is, when a people withhold zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala withholds the rains of the heavens and withholds the khairat of the earth, any crops and so forth. Yes? If people engage in adultery or in acts of debauchery, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends, as a punishment to them, sends any diseases and illnesses of which the people of the previous times have never had a reality of. So the spiritual and the practice has an impact with the outward. And this was the understanding. This is why piety itself was connected to how people used to see of what occurs to them in their daily lives. Yes? And today when we talk about these things, we call them natural disasters, yes? Or whatever, yes? But in reality, they have a basis within the reality of how this relationship between the two was held together. No? No. So this reality started to separate. And now if we're going to go in a moment to Jibril hadith, yes? And speak about that inshallah ta'ala. But before we do that inshallah, just go through, so we go in order of what I just mentioned now, a bit more detail about what the scholar has mentioned. So inshallah I'll read, or one of us can read this topic inshallah ta'ala. Now, so for the four components of the faith, when he mentions the four components, he's talking here about the three that we all know, and the fourth being the ilm of the amarat al-akhir zaman, or yawm al-qiyamah, or yawm al-akhir. And alamat al-kubra, wusta and sughra, we're all going to come to that in a moment inshallah. Of these are actually subheadings of these five sciences which the scholars now going to mention that fall within this. The same way when we talk about fiqh, yes, there's usul of fiqh, there's qawaid fiqhiyya, there's the principles of fiqh, how fiqh, rules of jurisprudence of fiqh. There's the fiqh itself, yes, and different sections of it. There's different sciences within that topic. The same way, there's different sciences within the akhirism, the knowledge of the last times as well, inshallah. So inshallah, we have much to do. Let's get to the book. Then we can look at the Jibril hadith, inshallah. Does anybody want to read for us? Yeah, bismillah. The four components of faith. Please read up to end of lesson 2, Sidi, inshallah. What I will do, I'll just stop here at certain moments, if that's okay, if you don't mind.
Lesson 1. The four components of the faith. A deep study of Hadith Jibreel, scholars as the fountain of Sunnah, teaches us about four components of the Islamic religion, Deen. This hadith, which is narrated by Imam Muslim, in his Sahih on the authority of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu reads, while we were sitting with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam one day, a man arrived whose garments were very white and whose hair was pitch black. Yet no traces of travel could be seen on him, even though none of us knew him. He continued to move forward until he sat in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, placing his knees against the knees of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his palms on his thighs, and said, "O Muhammad, tell me about Islam." The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, Islam comprises of bearing witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad is the Messenger of Allah, duly performing prayer, giving zakah, fasting the month of Ramadan, and performing pilgrimage if you have the means to. He commented, "True." And we were astonished at why he would ask, then confirm the answer. He then continued, "Tell me about Iman." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, that is to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and divine destiny, its good and its bad. And the man commented again, "True." Then he asked, "Tell me about ihsan." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Him. For if you see Him not, He sees you. He then said, "Tell me about the hour of the last day." He replied, "The one who asked does not know more than the one asking." The man then asked, "Can you tell me about its signs?" To which he replied, "Its signs are, a slave girl will give birth to her mistress, and barefooted, destitute, barely covered shepherds will be seen competing in constructing lofty buildings." Then he left, and after a while the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, "O Umar, do you know who the questioner was?" I replied, "Allah and His Messenger know best." He replied, "It was Gabriel. He came to teach you the foundations of your religion."
So this is very clear. He can teach you the foundations of your religion. Yes. So the foundation of the religion are four, three of which you all are aware of, and the fourth, inshallah ta'ala, which we are hoping to look at, inshallah, today, and progress with that, inshallah. Also, this is Sunnah, this hadith. It's known as as the quintessential essence of the Sunnah. All the Sunnah seeps and originates from this hadith. Every bab, every major topic section in our deen has a hadith that is the most important demarcated. For example, in Salah, the al-Hadith in Salah is the hadith of Musiya Salah. The person who comes, فَصَلَّى فَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فَصَلِّ فَإِنَّكَ لَمْ تُصَلِّ. And the person who comes, he prays, he says, and the Prophet says, "Go back and pray." You have not prayed. He goes back, comes back, he says it 3 times. And then he says, "Ya Rasulullah, فَإِنَّ لَا أَعْرَفَ الصَّلَاةِ إِلَّا هَذِهِ." I don't know what Salah except this. Then the Prophet goes back and teaches him, إِذَا رَكَعْتَ فَارْكَعْ. No? حَتَّى يَعْتَدِلْ. And then he taught him how to pray, and the ulama have derived in the hadith that this is the bare, absolute minimum through which your prayer can be considered to be salah. And this is the Arqam, the faraid of your salah. After this, there is nothing called salah. So the scholars have derived that from this hadith. You know? And then so forth. When Prophet خُذُوا مَنَاسِكَكُمْ عَنِّي, take your manasik of Hajj from me. This is the hadith that establishes what are the absolute fundamental elements of your Hajj. Yes? So this Sunnah, when he mentioned this means that this is the most important demarcation and clarification of the Sunnah of our deen. Can I continue?
From the context of this hadith, it becomes evident that there are 4 components of this religion. They are confirmed by the sentence, "It was Gabriel. He came to teach you the foundations of your religion." Another confirmation of these 4 components is found in the verses of Surah Al-Jumu'ah that reads, "He is the one who sent among the unlettered people a messenger from among themselves who recites to them his signs."
Can you hear okay? No, it's fine. Continue.
Another confirmation of these 4 components is found in the verse of Surah Al-Jumu'ah that reads, "He is the one who sent among the unlettered people a messenger from among themselves, who recites to them his signs, and purifies them, and teaches them the book and the wisdom. And indeed, before this, they were in clear misguidance."
Okay, so can we see the 4 parts of those that are within this ayah? So the ayah starts, "Huwa alladhi ba'atha fil ummiyin rasulan minhum." He is the one who has sent from amongst yourselves a prophet. Yes? So, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. He yatlu, and he recites upon them, or says to them, or clarifies for them, ayatihi. Meaning what? The ayah or the alamat of Sa'ah and tahawulat al-umam, which is that these are the signs. Yes? So as is mentioned in the hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, is also mentioned in this ayah. Then you have ilmul ihsan, yuzakkihim, purifies them. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ, and he teaches them the book, وَالْحِكْمَةِ. So يُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. These are the 3 elements of Islam, Iman and Ihsan. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ, and if you are prior to that in clear misguidance. That is, when a person doesn't have access to these 4 parts of our deen, he is in misguidance. The first 3 we all know that, and we know why that's the case. As for the last, it's because in end times, a person will be living in hira, will live in tahayyur, will live in confusion, and be perplexed. It's only through the signs of the alamat that a person will be able to decipher that, inshallah.
In the verse, recites to them his signs, refers to the science of the signs of the last day and changes in the history of nations.
So this is the scholar has called it fiqh al-tahawwalat wal-umam, which means the science or the fiqh of change, as just mentioned there, and the change of umam. How do you translate that last thing?
In the history of nations.
History of nations, no? So because what we're going to get to in a moment when you look at the hadith, the 2 components of it, is that the Prophet mentioned akhir zaman, what's going to occur. And it said, Da'at alaykum al-umam. The umam will come and feast upon you. So the Prophet mentioned that the first thing that this deen will start to fall apart, chain by chain. Yes? أولها الحكم وآخرها الصلاة The first thing that his deen will start to fall apart by is by what? Rule. Yes? Hukm. And then the last thing that his deen will fall apart by is, after salah there is no deen. When salah falls by the weight and people's importance of salah is no longer there, or the salah is not established, or there's no place where salah is established or taught, then the deen has come, has come apart from the chain that holds it together. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I follow you.
At which level, when you say salah is the last one falling apart, is it like in everyone?
The mujtama', the mujtama', general society, salah no longer has any or plays any importance in their life. Even the zahir, the outward form of salah, what's the word I'm looking for? The ritual, even that is an not establishment, even that is there's some remnant of salah still remaining. But from the urwa, when it starts to take all deen, the chain starts to come apart, is that, and we come across as reading the hadith gradually, inshallah, is what will occur. And there'll be the whole congregation. There won't be one person within there who will have devotion within their prayer. The whole congregation will be devoted. Even one person who will have devotion within the prayer. So these are the signs.
Hukm, is that Sharia?
Hukm, rule.
Ruling, is that Sharia?
Like Sharia rule, or at least rule by where the power, authority, and status remains within the hands of Muslims. Yes. I'm going to get to that when we talk to see about Hadith and Jibreel. Remember, the Prophet is not going to spell everything out. Sometimes that is there. Vast majority of cases, it's going to be, as we mentioned, rules, signs, portents, symbols. And this is also the same in all scriptures. Yes, if you look in other scriptures prior to the Quran, it's all by symbolism. It's not spelled out directly. And even those who claim to receive some sort of knowledge of the unseen, and there are people from the Muslims like that also. Yes, like we have our own versions of Nostradamus. Yes, they also speak in riddles. Yes, mimicking the revelations. And even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the kahana, what did he used to do? They also speak in riddles to mimic the revelations, of Kitab Allah.
Purifies them refers to the science of ihsan, or excellence of faith. Teaches them the book and the wisdom refers to the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah, which, in addition to the science of ihsan, formulate the triangle of law, creed and spirituality. Without understanding these four, there will be incomplete and clear misguidance, as the verse concludes.
Just quickly read section 2, please.
Lesson 2. The thematic and religious unity of Hadith Jibreel. Thematic unity refers to the fact that the Hadith contains 4 topics which follow each other in a unified sequence. Unity has neither been negated by a text nor by a statement declaring that they are separate. Religious unity means that the 4 topics together discuss the knowledge of the components of the religion in such a manner that indicate their support of one another. The Prophet ﷺ referred to this unity when he said, "To teach you the foundations of your religion." Scholars of Usul call these 4 topics together the fountain of the Sunnah. The fact that this hadith contains 4 topics formulating the body of the religion was something noticed by Imam al-Bukhari, who entitled the chapter that included this hadith, a chapter on the questions of Angel Gabriel to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding Iman, Islam, Ihsan, and the science of the last hour, and the prophetic response, and his saying after that to teach you your religion, including all of them in the religion. In addition, the titles added by scholars to the chapter headings in Sahih Muslim, we read, a chapter explaining Iman, Islam, Ihsan, and the signs of the hour.
Dave, okay, so from that you've all understood, inshallah, that the hadith is the Ummah Sunnah, and within the hadith the four elements are clearly presented, yes? And we mentioned, before we had a conversation about it earlier, that why is it the case that it hasn't been as developed as maybe the other three areas, and we mentioned what that is. So what is the function of the fourth component of the faith? What is this reason? What is therefore? The Sheikh mentions, first of all, renewing the understanding of da'wah. Da'wah was the first thing that started since the first day of Islam, as it was the main duty of the Prophet ﷺ. Tayyib. Fiqh al-tahawulat, or understanding the portents of the last times, would enable a person to reform their da'wah accordingly. And it will enable a person to reform the da'wah accordingly. And he mentions this so that when a person is calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's certain portents or signs that have occurred which require that the da'i be aware, be wa'i, and have knowledge and be understanding that this is not the initial way or the best way to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this particular context. For example, a person wants to hold on to, for example, or to call back people to the importance of spirituality and the centrality it has to our faith. Yes. However, the understanding among some may be that this is not central to our faith, nor is it something which may be an integral part of our faith. So a person will concentrate on one aspect of only that, when this may lead to dissension in his call, or dissension amongst the people to whom he is trying to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that in itself may not be the best means by which to approach the call to Allah. So what a person being aware of his surroundings and what is occurring around him, he can transform his da'wah accordingly. So now what's occurring, for example, is this idea that the Prophets alayhim salatu wasalam had great authority and power. Yes, this is something we as believers all know and all attest to and all acknowledge. However, if you look at how people's imaginations are now being you could say exposed to, that there's nothing inherently great about not just our prophets, but all prophets. It's become to a state where the idea that's been placed in the imaginations of children now, and we live in like a superhero culture almost, yes, where it's permeated into the minds of children, where suddenly they've seen things that we would never see previously. Through the special effects of the new films and the new generation of films that are out there now, yes. If you tell them the stories about the prophets, it doesn't have that same effect which you may have had in our generation, for example, because they're seeing buildings falling apart and earth exploding and Qiyamah standing in 2018 or whatever that film that came out, other things, yes. So the imagination of the children or whatever is being taken away, where the daraja and maqam of the prophets and what they performed by the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the ihmiyah of that is being removed from their hearts. Yes? So for a person to call children, for example, others, even adults, for that matter, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that context has to be understood. This is not something that's unknown. This is not something that's just occurred like that. But there are reasons why this is occurring in places where these films are being produced from. So a person has to be aware that this is what people are being used to now. This is the level, intensity of which they're, what they have seen. And a lot of these things, there's a company called Industrial Light and Magic, yes, and they go by the title of ILM, Ilm, yes, and I'm sure that's not a coincidence either, yes. So a person knowing the reality of what's occurring around him and the importance of what is occurring around him, he can change the da'wah, or not change the reality of the da'wah, but change the method by which he attempts to communicate that to a different generation. Yes? So that's one of the reasons of importance of looking at the fourth component of the Akhir Zaman, of Fiqh Tahawulat. Yes? The other section the Sheikh mentions protecting the other three essential sciences. What is meant by protection here is the preservation of the methods of transmitting sacred knowledge and the alteration during transitional periods and tribulations. This is done by defining the challenges of different stages in history and providing the qualifications of true inheritors of that sacred knowledge as mentioned in the prophetic hadith. This knowledge will be inherited in every generation by the most upright men and women. They will continue to remove distortions of extremists and the arrogation of those who wish to abolish it, and the misinterpretation of the ignorant. The famous hadith, Ta'wil al-Jahilin, that's part of hadith now. So your knowledge of ilm al-tahawulat will give you the true understanding of this inherited science of our deen. And the Imam, the Sheikh, has also got a famous book, this one which I mentioned previously, which this is an introduction. It just talks about the Madrasa al-Abawiyya, which is the inherited science from the Prophet ﷺ. And inherited science of the Prophet ﷺ is a science which the knowledge of our deen is such that it contains within it transformation, not just academic knowledge. And the two components we're going to come to in a moment of Sayyidina Jibreel talk about that. This is one of the first things that will occur to the Ummah. That knowledge will start to leave the Ummah. And when we're speaking about knowledge, we're not talking about information. Alhamdulillah, like even now, I don't buy books anymore, unless they're very rare. The reason being, I know I can probably find it as a PDF somewhere. Yes, and you have one, in the past you used to have something called Maktaba Shamila, the complete compendium, yes, in which you get 10,000 books on one DVD. Now you don't need to do that, it's all online. Yes, but the confusion hasn't ceased. Yes, the heterodox opinions haven't ceased. They are still the same. They're increasing by the days as we progress. If you ask anybody now, and I'm sure we're all in the same boat, the confusion out there now about our deen, and you speak to our children's generation, our kids at university and so forth, our colleges. If you ask them about the confusion out there now, they just don't know who or what to follow, and what is heterodox and what is orthodox. And this is from the Akhir al-Zaman. When the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, فَإِنَّ اللَّهِ لَا يَنْتِزُوا عِلْمُ انْتِزَاعًا يَنْتِزُوا بِهِ مَوْتُ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Allah will take knowledge by seeking it out from the hearts of people, intiza'an, but Allah will take it by the death of the scholars. And the scholars are the inheritors. They can give you understanding of the deen, which knowledge and books cannot give you understanding of the deen. One of our teachers, Sheikh Umar Khatib, used to mention that the Sheikh yajma tafarruqat. The Sheikh brings all the aspects of the deen into an individual that he can see and he can follow. Yes? The Murabbi, the Sheikh al-Murabbi. he brings all of that together into a balanced, living, working individual that shows you that deen can be beautiful, it can be uplifting, spiritual, and contemporary, and real. Yes, and that you will not get from the books, meaning that he brings all the aspects together into one person. Yajma' tafarruqat, he brings together all the different aspects of it into a single person. And this is why in our times there's a campaign by shaitan. Yes, there's a campaign. Shaitan works at different levels. Yes, he works at the level of a societal level, he works at a familial level, he works at an individual level, he works at the level of the alam, of the world, of the universe. He has different plans, really. Shaitan, mashallah, is well planned. And one of the roles of shaitan, and this is something that you can read about, is taking the haiba of scholarship and ulama out from the hearts of people. So any spiritual person out there, he is at war with shaitan. Shaitan is trying his utmost to remove this station which he has in the hearts of most people. And however shaitan does that, and that's why there's a war going on now where any person who's connected to any effort of da'wah, spirituality, any call, higher call to Allah, not just the outward forms of the words, but the realities of the deen, he is at war with shaitan, and shaitan is at war with him. And this isqat, or this drop, this removing this authority sometimes occurs by other people, meaning that just good, well-intentioned people who are there, who become you can mention, almost say the soldiers of shaitan, who are doing this. No? So when the Sheikh has mentioned these two reasons of why, we study and look at the fiqh tahawulat or the fiqh akhir zaman, these are the two reasons. And then we come to another aspect. No? We haven't got to Hussein Jibril hadith yet. No? Khair. And this is protection. When he mentions siyat ulumul turath, protecting our sacred knowledge and our sacred understanding of our faith. I've mentioned many a time before and this comes with, when people see the reality is that our sacred knowledge of our faith, it can solve all the problems of this ummah. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a revelation upon the Prophet sallallahu the revelation came as a solution for his whole ummah. When Allah subhanahu al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. This day I have perfected my religion upon you. So the ikmal of this, and this was not the last ayah. The last ayah was revealed was وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ, fear the day in which you return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last ayah revealed on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the ikmal, or the end of the revelation upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, meant that the deen was in the capacity and has the capacity and continues to have the capacity to rectify all the social ills and fulfill all the human needs of bashar, of creation, of humanity. However, that will only come when the deen and the knowledge of the deen is being is being transported from one generation to another without break. And however, that break or that lack of transportation of that or transport of that knowledge from one generation to another is occurring. That break is now occurring where knowledge from the previous generation of the Turath of the Prophet ﷺ is not passing down to the next generation. And this previously, as you know, was done through the asanid, through the chains of narration, and through ulama taking from those that took before them until our present times. And that practice is very rare now. If you ask about the chain of transmission between scholars, that is almost now something that's become very rare. When in the past that was the norm of what used to occur. So inshallah, let's get to Hadith Sayyidina Jibreel, and find there's two parts of Hadith Sayyidina Jibreel. With lesson 4, we already touched upon it. It mentions the well-established practices which are the deen, which are known as thawabit. Islam, Iman, these are thawabit, these things that don't change, they stay the same. Meaning that we know what they are, we know what the importance of them is, and we know how to perform them. Whether a person doesn't perform them or does perform them, that's irrelevant, but the thawabit, meaning that these things do not change. They are fixed principles of our faith. Is that clear? Then you have the changes, the mutawaghirat. And this is the changes that are going to occur and will continue to occur till we get to the last day. Remember, these are amaratu sa', these are signs of the last day, not the last day. The last day is something different. These are the signs that will lead up to it as we gradually keep getting closer to that time. Is that clear? So I'll just skim through that chapter. Okay, there now we have the pillars of the knowledge of the signs of Allah, and this is chapter 5. And the hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel has two main pillars in its two statements. Has two main pillars in its two statements. And the two pillars of that hadith, we're looking at the last quarter of the hadith, which is alamat as-sa'ah, yes? The first three parts we've passed. Islam, Ihsan, we've passed that. So now if you want to draw a diagram, you have the hadith, you have the three parts, Islam, Ihsan, then you have the Akhir al-Zaman. Akhir al-Zaman, the hadith, the signs of last time, it has two parts to that hadith. And the first part is أَنْتَلِدَ الْأَمَّةُ رَبَّتَهَا. That is, the literal translation is a slave girl will give birth to her mistress. That's a literal translation. Yes? And the second part is أَن تَرَى الْحُفَاةِ الْعُرَاةِ الْعَالَةِ الرِّعَاءَ الشِّيَةِ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. You will see, and the second part is the barefooted, the barely covered, the destitute, the shepherds, continually competing with one another in constructing lofty buildings. Okay? So the Sheikh says here, he says, فَالرُّكْنَ الْأَوَّلِ نَفْسٌ إِسْتِبَاقِ فِي ترميز بلاغي لما سيحصل من تغير الخلل في قرار العلم والاعتقاد. He says the first sentence presents a prospective symbolic text. Which is the first text? Slave girl. Yes? It presents a symbolic text prophesizing a failure and a change in the institution of knowledge and faith. Ilm wal-i'tiqad. Any knowledge, and it's connected to that belief. The question you may be asking is, how can that be derived from أنت للأمة ربتها? How can that be derived from that saying in itself? The Sheikh mentions that this can be derived from this because, first of all, two things we've been informed of here. We've been informed that the slave girl will give birth to her mistress. Okay? We know in history and our sacred fiqh, our sacred law, that a slave girl, when she gives birth, she immediately becomes free. Yes, we know that. So what occurred, first of all, is that the knowledge has not been passed to the daughter who's been born, that in reality she should be set free. So there's a break of knowledge from one generation to another. Yes? And secondly, because of that break of knowledge, that will also affect the i'tiqad, that also affect the beliefs of a person. Meaning that because its knowledge itself transforms what a person or how a person believes. So we in our times, for example, you have two people in a household. Yes, one is Muslim and the other is possibly an atheist or not Muslim. Yes, and that has occurred because of the break of transmission of knowledge. So the break of transmission of knowledge, not information, yes, not CDs, not everything else, of transformative spiritual knowledge, which has a light. When the Imam Shafi'i said ilm, Waqi' ibn Jarrah, when Sayyidina Imam Shafi'i complained to him, and Surah Hifzi, and Surah bad memorization, he says ilm nur, فلا يعطي للعاصي. Knowledge is a light, it's not given to the sinful. Yes? So this transformative knowledge, which is light, creates i'tiqad, creates belief and certainty. But if that knowledge is not transported to a generation, their beliefs will also become, and their practice will also become deficient. And this part of the hadith is talking, and that part of the hadith is talking about that break that will occur. And we see this, and we have seen this historically. This has occurred as the Prophet ﷺ has said, Sadaqallahu wa Rasulul Kareem, Allah and His Prophet have spoken the truth. Where the transporting of knowledge has not taken place. This has led on gradually to a separating of practice and knowledge, which has thereafter, over the passing of time, has led to disbelief and almost a cultural belief in our faith, rather than a deep-rooted, spiritual-based following of our faith. So I will just come back in a moment. That's the first. The second, so the first gives signs that knowledge and i'tiqad will start to be missing from the ummah, which will thereafter lead to the weakening of i'tiqad. In the past, like I mentioned before, this is the relationship between belief and knowledge. Knowledge was not separated from belief and action. Yes, the two were connected together, and we have the secular understanding, which has now become the reality for all countries now, even Muslim countries, where the two cannot be taught together, where we've almost followed the methodology of other societies, but where the two of the spiritual and the reality of what occurs in the world cannot be taken together. Even Muslim states, countries, or traditional Muslim societies that teach knowledge in this form now. When in the past it wasn't like this. In the past, as the Sheikh mentions, it was all taught together as one synthetic in whole, not separated of how it is today. Yes. So this is something that will occur. The Prophet foretold this, and it occurred. Now it's occurred to the state where you have a faculty of Sharia, and you have a faculty of economics, and you have a faculty of law, and so forth, where all these faculties are now totally separated. And this is something that's absolutely new. And it's something which was not present within our ummah. Even to the extent when natural disasters occur, like I mentioned, they are reported as hawadith tabi'iyah, natural disasters, when in fact our Sharia and reality of our deen says something totally different to how that is understood in our present times. Yes, is that clear? Inshallah. And then the second part we could end on some hadith from Ashura to Sa'ah, and then inshallah I want to hear from yourselves as well, inshallah. I don't want to do all the talking. And the second part, Rukan al-Thani, أن ترى الحفاة العراة العالة رياء الشياء يتطاولون في البنيان. You see the barefooted, barely covered, destitute shepherds continually competing with one another in constructing lofty buildings. And the Sheikh says in the translation, somebody can you just read that for us, please? The second sentence, page 15.
The second sentence presents prospective symbolic text prophesizing a change and corruption occurring in the areas of governance and economy.
So we might be wondering, where did that come from? Yes, governance and economy. Yes, from that. It comes from the fact that somebody who's naked, destitute, without shoes, yes, a shepherd, suddenly he's now building and competing with others to build huge structures. So the Prophet ﷺ is describing a state here, fast forward any 50, 60 years, whatever, these same people are now competing to build huge edifices. What occurred from here to there is that there's been a transformation by which these people who are not even fit to rule have now become and have the wealth to build these huge structures. So what's occurred is that economic change has taken place to place them from that state to this state. So revolution has occurred in between these two states, because these people would not naturally be placed to be competing in building a lofty structure. Lofty structures obviously denotes power, authority, and strength, and also governance. Yes, so that has occurred. In reality, if you were to look back of who it should be, who should it be? Should be the ashraf, or the present rulers, who of that time, who were not going to be naked, destitute, shepherds, to become rulers. So it's as if the Prophet ﷺ is informing us that this is what they will be, this is what they will become. In between that, lots of changes and revolutionary change will take place. And that occurred. Remember what Fir'aun did when he heard the news of the child that's going to be born? Yes? He took the steps necessary, as evil as they were. He slaughtered every male-born child. Yes? So he saw the end of what that was occurring. We saw the end coming as well. We were told by the Prophet ﷺ. But there are few that actually listen to what the Prophet ﷺ has said. And this two signs the Prophet ﷺ has given, two of the greatest signs of what will cause this disruption in the Ummah. Severing of knowledge from the reality of what we believe, and thereafter governance and economics. And the Prophet has mentioned these two things because in essence it's going to be from the first, the severance of knowledge and the teaching of knowledge, and the reality of that transformative knowledge in the hearts of people, and thereafter what that will lead to onto governance and transformation of the economy. So these hadith starts off with these two elements. Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam only mentioned the Prophet only mentioned these two. Remember the Prophet was saying this, yes? To who? Just now, Sayyidina Jibreel. No? Because Sayyidina Jibreel said, what did he say? Ma'amarat, what are his signs? Yes? He was first asked about the Day of Judgment. First, that question, no? The question is not more knowledge than the questioner. But then Sayyidina Jibreel asked him, Ma'amarat, what are his signs? Sayyidina Jibreel didn't, some ulama have even mentioned that Sayyidina Jibreel didn't know the answers to this question. Who gave him the answer? The Prophet ﷺ. The same one that he spoke from Fajr all the way to Maghrib, telling people what will happen till the end of time. And he told some of them he told directly, others he told in rumuz and symbols like we've mentioned. And this is one of the symbols, one of the portents that the Prophet ﷺ gave. So inshallah, thereafter, under that, then you have the asharat. And within those two principles, Wusta, Sughra and Kubra, all the signs come within that. Because when a person, and as the hadith mentioned, there'll be a gathered congregation of salah, there'll be one person amongst them who will have concentration in their salah. Yes? Where does that go back to? From the two things, principles? Ilm and i'tiqad, knowledge and practice based upon it. So the diagram will look like this. The two parts of the hadith, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, and then you have alamat al-wusta, sughra and kubra, the greater signs, the middle signs and the minor signs, you could say. And then now, next time we're together, we're going to go into the 5 sciences that the scholar has broken that down into. Now, the 5 sciences, the scholar has broken that down into. And remember, the prophets have mentioned, ينحل هذه الدين. This deen is separate, and urwatan, chain by chain, male by male, so to say. And he mentioned the first of it will be hukum, rule, and the last of it will be salah. So there will be a gradual process in which that will occur. Yes. As we said, the Prophet only is going to give us portents. He's going to give us signs. It's for us to work out in between of what's to be done, and also what occurs. And this is when you get to the hadith about akhir sa'a, we'll see how the Prophet ﷺ has the ilaj of the Prophet ﷺ, how he's done this, how he's how the Prophet has remedied this, you could say. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. And remember, sometimes even when things happen in our deen, we respond to what our natural inclination is, anger, or to detest, or to, for example, to hold a person hatred, to make it personal, to have a vendetta against somebody else. And the Prophet ﷺ has told us, even when differences occur within the deen, how a person is supposed to or react to it. And the example is of when Sayyidina Umar came into the masjid very quickly. He saw a person reciting the Quran, not in the same way as the Prophet has taught him. So he waited, and he was really, Sayyidina Umar, mashallah. So he waited, and he got his jilbab, he got his thobe, and he waited. As soon as the person did salam, he grabbed him and wrapped him in his thobe, and he carried him to the Prophet ﷺ, and he dropped him in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, فَإِنَّهُ قَرَأَ غَيْرَ مَا عَلَّمْتَنِي. He's written way other than how you have taught me, Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet said, أَرْسُلْهُ أَوَّلًا, let him go. So he let him go first. And then he said to the person, اقرأ, he read. And he goes, هَكَذَا نُزِلْ. It's been revealed like this. He said, Umar, اقرأ. He said, Umar read. He goes, هَكَذَا نُزِلْ. Like this has been revealed. The 7 ways of recitation of the Quran. And there's a lot of debate on the scholars what this actually means in detail. Then Sayyidina is mentioned, that Sayyidina Umar is as if he had something go through his heart. The Prophet immediately recognized it. And he said, في شك بعد ذلك يا عمر. He said, doubt after this, and he struck his chest. And outward, when Sayyidina Umar mentioned, when this occurred, it's as if he was looking into the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that doubt totally left his heart. Meaning that how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with this is a sign of how differences in the deen are dealt with. It returned back to Allah and His Prophet ﷺ, and it dealt with a degree of openness and tasamuh. And this is called adab al-ikhtilaf of our deen. And this is all that the Ummah asks for. And when people are going through disagreements and so forth, I'll talk about later, it's adab wa ikhtilaf, of determines and deciphers, inshallah, of how we deal with issues when the Ummah disagrees on certain issues. We'll just read one quick hadith, inshallah, and we'll stop there, inshallah. And like we mentioned, the hadith are to be understood in the context of what we've just taken previously, inshallah ta'ala. And remember that we have to go back to the istirahat of the Prophet ﷺ. The scholars mentioned that when this thing happened called Rabi al-Arabi, the Arab Spring, and people saying it's mashallah, it's hurriya, and it's freedom, and it's inshallah ta'ala democracy and so forth. And this is how realities are beautified for us. But in reality, what was it? If you look at the dictionary of the Prophet ﷺ, it was a fitna. It was a tribulation. In the initial era, people started saying, alhamdulillah, this is the coming of, inshallah, greatness for the Arabs and so forth, yes. But in the end, it turned out to be a great tribulation for the Arab countries. And at that time, for anybody to say that in that form, there's only the ulama that kept their distance. They want that people didn't have the isti'dad, the ability to comprehend of what is going to occur after this. But the prophetic signs were there of what it was. It was a fitna. So people will dress up realities in our time to present it in a form in which the reality of it is not that actually. And this is also from the fitna of Akhir Zaman. Subhanallah. No. The first hadith that it starts off, this is Fitnu Malahim wa Asharatu Sa'ah. This is the tribulations and the great battle that will occur, and Asharatu Sa'ah, and the time and the signs of the hour. Yes? So the hadith actually starts off with a hadith you would not expect. Yes? أنا حريت الرجل قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله ويؤمن به وبما جئت به فإذا فعلوا ذلك فعصوا مني دماءهم وأموالهم إلا بحقها وحسابهم على الله. This hadith is also in 40 hadith of Nawawi in different form. It mentions that Abu Hurairah raised from the Prophet ﷺ, I've been ordered to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, and they believe in me and all of that which I have brought. And if they do this, then they are safe from me, and their blood is safe and their wealth is safe, except by the right of Islam, and their judgment is upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this hadith has been mentioned here because of the fact that in Akhir Zaman, the qatil and the maqtul, they will fight and one will kill the other, and the person who's killed will not know for why he's killed, and the person who has killed will not know why he is killing. Meaning that there will be so much confusion that a person will yastahil dima' al-mu'minin al-muslimin, he will make permissible the blood of another Muslim based upon total misunderstanding of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why this hadith has been mentioned. And one more hadith before we go, inshallah. It's mentioned ستكون فتنة تستنظف العرب قتالها وقاتلها في النار اللسان فيها أشد من وقع من السيف. He gives there'll be fitan in times in which the Arabs will fight each other, and the person who kills will be in the hellfire. And the lisan fiha ashaddu waqa' min as-sayf, and the tongue in that day shall have which will be more dangerous or will be more intense than the falling of swords. So these are hadith, inshallah, as time progresses we'll look at, inshallah. But scholars have mentioned about this one, it's mentioned here, that when it says lisanu fiha ashaddu min waqa' as-sayf, that the tongue in that time will have a greater effect or more intense than the falling of a sword, is because of what's transported, what's said. Sometimes words that are said have an effect upon the morale of people and sometimes armies more than the actual battle itself. This is why even recently when the whole issue in Iraq occurred, the only news they needed to spread amongst the troops, when the chain of command was broken, was that what? Was that the government's over, it's capitulated, Saddam's been captured. That's the only news they sent. When that wasn't the case, the Republican guards were waiting for orders, but the chain of command had been broken, and this was spread throughout the society. So what occurred? They surrendered. Yes? they surrendered, and it appeared as the capital was taken when many of the battalions of Republican Guard were still operating. Yes. So when the Prophet mentioned that lisan fiha ashaddu min waqa' as-sayf, that the tongue itself in those days will be more intense in the falling of swords, meaning of warfare. You know? So inshallah, as we continue, we'll understand more of this, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Do you have any questions? Not that we necessarily answer them, yes, but inshallah, any questions, inshallah. Fadl Sidi?
First sign on
Tell you yes.
So the explanation the Sheikh gave, it does have a full deep explanation. Explanation is it was only apparent. It's like that's another.
Yeah, no, apparent is like, because the apparent also holds true, as does the non-apparent. Yes. So at both levels it holds true. Because utitu jawami al-qalim. He Prophet was given jawami al-qalim, which means that his words when he says sallam, and he have a meaning, which is the linguistic translation. It also has greater than that. Yes, and this is one of those incidents where it has greater than that. So answer your question, Sidi? No. Is there any other questions?
I was just thinking, as you said, the four sciences are like a chain that have to be taken holistically.
There you are, yes.
These two signs, would I be correct to understand that would also be interrelated? For example, one interpretation, understanding that I got from my own mind with the first hadith was with regards to education and the roles of, for example, a teacher and a student. Stemming from disobedient children to their parents, the first educator, then coming to lose respect for the teacher, which is on an individual level, and then relating to the second one on a societal level. I understood the teacher's role, like for example, the blind leading the blind. So it would go both ways. The role of the student, for example, losing respect for the teacher.
Yes.
Also the role of the teacher, not having the knowledge, not practicing the knowledge, not being responsible. Would there be a correct understanding?
We mentioned that the true madrasa al-abawiyah, as the Sheikh calls it, which is the inherited school of the Prophet ﷺ, is a transformative school. Yes? And it's holistic. There's no such thing as natural disasters within that school. Everything is placed in the context of where it's connected to the divine, and it's connected to our revelation and our understanding of the universe. Yes? So the place which the child has and in connection to the teacher, all of that is one part of that madrasa. It's this, it's the traditional imbuing of knowledge from one generation to another, and that's a holistic imbuing. And we live in a time now where where it's separated, to say the least. Yes, we live in a time now where religious knowledge is considered to be totally separated from, even obviously from secular knowledge, so to say. Even though that separation is not there in our traditional sciences, and that separation is such to the extent where Muslims themselves, even in their own institutions, have accepted that separation. Yes? Meaning that, for use a crass example, but Islamic schools, yes? You have the curriculum, and then you have Quran studies or something of that sort, yes? The idea of Islamization of our syllabuses, while that was something that was talked about in the 80s and the 90s, that's been totally now rejected by most Islamic schools now. For the fact that the parents themselves, and even people send their children to Islamic schools, want their kids to have a secular education. So, I'm not giving the answers to this at the moment, yes, because it's a very complicated situation. And then you go to Islamic universities, yes, and it's the academic system, yes, and the academic system is a system which is not akin to the traditional madrasa system. When I was in Syria, alhamdulillah, I went to a Islamic university, but I also used to go to the teachers directly and study with them, in their own homes and so forth. Yes, and there's no comparison between the two. There's no comparison at all. I can tell you if somebody's been to a Western university, to a Eastern university, to use a better word, and then gone to sit at the feet of the Mashaykh. There's no comparison at all. You just have to, look at the difference and the ta'ammuk and the sort of intensity and the depth of knowledge of what's happening in that subject. For example, Imam Tahawi, why has he written that work? Why has he mentioned the three Imams of the Hanafi madhab at the beginning? There's all reasons for why these scholars have written these works. Yes, there's a context around that. It's not just the wording of the books that we have. Yes, and that you will never get in a university system. Yeah. So that system is something which is a holistic system, and has to be adopted on that basis. When you start breaking that system down and just taking books out from the syllabus and implementing it in a non-holistic system, then you have the sort of, you could say the deformations that we have in our societies.
Could that be another understanding of the break? That
the
is lack of the, this idea of being
knowledge and
professional as a teacher and not allowing students to come into the personal, which is actually something that is traditional, that the student personally knows what the teacher how he eats, when he sleeps. So they have more intimacy than a teacher.
Absolutely. Traditionally the students would be like children to the teacher, and that's how if you go to the books of Adab al-Ta'alim wa-Ta'allum, teaching and learning, that's how the relationship would be. Yes. And that relationship would be a very close relationship in which, in the absence of the student, the teacher would ask where he was, and so forth. Yes, but we live in a time now to ask about somebody else is considered to be crossing boundaries and so forth. So it's confusing times for everyone concerned. Yes. That's also to do with alienation that we have in today's societies and so forth. But inshallah, we'll stop there, inshallah. Any other questions directly related to the topic?
Regarding the two signs, can we say it's the first sign is like we're not interested anymore by the akhirah, and then
our ilm has given us a break of i'tiqad. So there's no people's reality of akhirah is not there anymore in the first place. Yes, so that knowledge, the traditional knowledge of where that is imbued into a generation, has been broken. And it's not a surprise. We're not surprised why people aren't interested as much in the akhirah, because the means to achieve that are no longer there anymore. That was broken a long time ago. Yes, that's why we say ilm al-turathi, al-taqlidi. If you say ilm al-taqlid to somebody in our generation, it's negative. Yes, people think of it as bad. They say ilm al-hadith or something like this, more modern methods of education and so forth. Yes, so that was broken by the break of the madrasa. So one is connected to the other. Two are not separate. Sheikh Habib used to mention that in the past, what used to occur is that the child would be educated within the confines of the greater home, like the Bayt al-Arabi. So it'd be a big home, and they have an orchard within there and so forth. And he would only go out the house accompanied by somebody. And then he would come back and stay within the house. They said by the time he reached about 16, he was already a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And wali al-khas, al-am. So by just being in the company and being protected. So I know it's difficult to achieve that sometimes, but this is where it was, and we have to look back to those periods of time and look to them with the eyes of reverence. Because now when you look back to these periods of time, it's what's almost inculcated into people. Look back to those periods of time was that there was takhalluf often. There was they were backward, or they were raji'i, yani, backward looking people. But in fact, if you look at the humanity of those people, mashallah, they were the greatest of people. And there's a reason why people like Salahuddin arose, Nuruddin Zengi, yani, this Alpar Salam, these great warriors that came after these madaris. Yes, we, you know, and Imam Salahuddin Ayyubi, when he created Madrasa Nasiriyah in Egypt, 40,000 warriors that came and liberated the Holy Lands. Yes, there's a reason these people were created. So anybody who tries to recreate that tariqah, inshallah, we give them to us, make dua for them for tawfiq, inshallah. And there's some change of that taking place, alhamdulillah, in places like Turkey, mashallah. For the pious generation, as some of the rulers are trying to create, mashallah, Allah give them tawfiq, inshallah. Any other questions?
Quick one. Sheikh, I mean, you said that the hadith of Abu Huraira.
Sorry?
Hadith of Abu Huraira, when he says that I have knowledge which is not passed on, and if he did, his neck would be cut.
Yes.
You said it's still preserved, is it? Or is it
There's still writings that have some of this in there. No? These are called juruf. They're like parchments. Yes, they were passed down from generation to generation. Obviously, the nature of the subject means there's a lot of folklore around it as well. Yes. So there's the fabrications, people made up things. People added things and stuff like this. Yes.
oral?
It's more like a preserved oral tradition. Yes, it's more like a preserved oral tradition, a lot more than the hadith. Yes. So if you search for it, you'll find different authors that have said that.
Is there anything in the tradition that is oral only, where there's no written record? It's only oral.
Yeah, there are still some. Like for example, they said that they mentioned that there was a science of how to recite a hadith. In the same way, there was a science of how to recite the Quran. Yes, but no written record of it. Instead, it was lost orally over time.
Is there a knowledge on how to find those people?
I'm sure it's somewhere in the archive somewhere, inshallah. Because they said the amount of work of what has actually been indexed is very, very little.
I'm thinking of charlatans who will jump in there. Guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have the idea that people that pass were somehow dumb. Yes? And this idea that's been, especially if you ask children this, they think, they didn't know anything in the past, that type of idea. Yes, and that's almost imbued into them. Yes, and this is obviously a precursor to rejecting tradition, isn't it, today? Yes. So these are changes that we need to try to imbue on all set of institutions.
Do you mean, like, for example, the word old-fashioned?
Yeah, just to, anything old is considered to be past out of date, not relevant. Any other questions?
Would you consider it wise or foolish, if you can give a straightforward answer as that, to if you read, for example, to prefer ancient scholars over somebody who's contemporary, taken from with the belief and understanding that taking from the ancient scholar is taken from the source directly, and avoiding all of the mess and nonsense along the way that's been added.
Basically,
Not that means that something later could have been added in a healthy manner.
Basically, Sidi, we have a very clear methodology of our tradition. Yes, what that means, what that includes. Anything that conforms to that tradition is taken. Anything that rejects that tradition or contradicts that tradition is viewed with an eye of suspicion. And generally, the qaida amma for people like me and others, the general rule we take is that ummati la tattafiqu ala ummati la tajtami' ala dalalah. My ummah will never unite upon falsehood. Yes. So whatever the vast majority of ummah has been doing, the vast majority of its history, that's your sign basically. Yeah? And that's what you see, what we believe about Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, Sayyidina Mahdi, what we believe about the revelation of the Quran, what we believe of hurmah of certain mubiqat, certain sins, for example. Your surest sign for what has the ummah believe for the vast majority of its history. You're going to get tafarrudat, you're going to get individual imam scholars that have said certain things. This is why Sayyidina Umar, he used to fear, the most fear his fear for his ummah was what? That was the ulama, slips of scholars. Yes, and that will always occur at the end of time for Allah to prove to people that infallibility is only for the prophets. No, infallibility is only for the prophets. So, do you have any other questions? We stop. Then inshallah, stop there. Inshallah, we'll continue with Allah Rad and at the end of last Friday of February. Inshallah, Jazakallah khair. سبحانه وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليه سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين العالمين